If you're a photographer, an illustrator, or a digital artist, in this video, I'm going to show you how to turn this paper into this paper. I'll walk you through everything from image selection to marketing to paper choice, so that you can share your art, make a healthy profit, and ultimately turn your passion into a career. Selling your images starts with the hardest choice you will ever make in your entire life. Not which college to go to, not who to marry, but what photos do you actually sell? This is probably not the best thing to use the spinner of doom on, and is probably something you should consider based on a few key criteria. 1, does it look great on a wall? This might sound obvious, but it's really not. A lot of my work is street candids, and while that's the work I'm most passionate about, a lot of the time it doesn't translate great to being wall art. 2, does it represent your voice as an artist? If you're going to take people's money and give them a piece of art, you probably want to make sure that you're proud of what it says about you. Also, it's important to consider what non-photographers actually want out of an art print. We'll go deeper on that later, but for now, let's say you picked maybe 6 to 10 images to start with. How the hell do you get them printed? There's 2 ways to go about this. There's print-on-demand services and there's custom printing. The big idea with print on demand is that you upload your images to an online service that will print and ship them only when somebody places an order, so you don't have to invest in any money up front and you never have to visit the post office. Print on demand is good. However, I don't think it's the best option, and I'll tell you why. If you go custom and get your images printed locally by a local photo printer, there are loads of benefits. Mainly, you'll have the opportunity to review the quality of the prints before they get sent to anyone, which is hugely important. Not only that, it gives you a lot more control over the packaging and delivery of said prints, which is something we'll go into a bit more later. Also, you don't have to run out and order 1,000 copies of every print you're going to sell. When you're first starting out, you might only get one order every now and then, and so realistically, you don't really have to put in any money up front with custom printing either. An even bigger advantage of doing it this way is even if you do get some test prints made before you make a sale, now you have a big stack of high quality art prints that you're really passionate about. So even if you don't sell any of them, they make great Christmas presents for friends and family. They always go down well. So it's a win-win situation. Some people have asked me about the third secret option, which is buying your own printer. And honestly, I just don't think it's really worth it. Unless you're churning out loads of prints on a daily basis, it's hard to economically justify, especially since if you're not using an inkjet printer regularly, it has to waste a lot of ink every time you switch it on doing a cleaning cycle. That ink is not cheap. I did a community post where I asked you if you printed your images, and I was shocked that basically nobody prints their images. Even if you don't want to sell prints or you don't feel like that sort of business move suits what you want to do, I highly encourage you to take some of your pocket money and go and spend it on a proper print of a couple of your favorite photos. Seeing your photos on a computer screen or Instagram is one thing, but seeing a photo that you're proud of and that you really enjoy looking at in the paper is such a different feeling. Now, once you've settled on how you're going to get things printed, you have to decide how you're going to get things printed, as in, what paper are you going to use? How big will you print? This is the most rabbit hole-y part of the process and where most people get stuck. You can get absolutely swamped by the sheer volume of options available when it comes to paper choice, sizing, mounting, framing. My advice would be to start simple. Pick one size to start with and keep it reasonable. I know 20 by 30 prints look sick, but the reality is you're probably more likely to sell more 8 by 10s. If you're an artist, you're probably a visual person, so get some masking tape or washi tape and mark out on a wall the size that you're planning to print in so that you can visually see how it fits in with a particular space. And once you know the size you want to print, then you have to select the paper. There's a lot going on with paper. Glossy, matte, pearl, rag. It can be overwhelming. The good news is that if you are using a local print shop, they'll almost always have a swatch pack or a sample pack with all of the different paper stocks they have available for either free or very cheap. If you haven't done a lot of printing before, you might be confused as to why paper is such a big deal. But the reality is that paper really affects the viewing experience, the tactile experience, and the look and feel and colors of your image a lot more than you might think. Paper choice is a matter of preference, but I think it's important to consider how the photos work with the paper to give the feeling that you want to give. For example, I like to print little 6x4s on pearl finish paper with white borders for that sort of 90s nostalgic photo album feeling. But on larger prints for the walls, I tend to prefer more natural textured papers like Hanamill Photo Rag, because to my eyes, it has a bit more of a fine arty feel. Printing is a vast and complicated art form in itself, so my advice would be start trying it now. Okay, so now that you've figured out printing the images themselves and how that all works, congratulations, that's the easy part. Now we have to figure out how to sell them. So how do you sell them? On the internet, of course, but you're gonna need a website or somewhere to send people. Now this video is not sponsored, so I'm not going to recommend one particular service or platform. Shopify, Squarespace, Webflow, even Instagram Shop are all perfectly fine options depending on your comfortability and level of experience with web design. This is a subtle hint to any of those companies if they would like to sponsor me. For me, I'm gonna be using Fourth Wall since it's integrated with my merch store and plugs directly into YouTube. But if you're not a YouTube creator, using Fourth Wall probably doesn't make that much sense. If you don't already have a website, which you should, it's 2024, if you're an artist you need a website. Squarespace tends to be about as easy as it gets for building a website if you don't have any experience with any of that. Here's the catch, selling things online is a whole different skill set that isn't photography or drawing or printing, and it's one of those things that you're just gonna have to learn over time. Before I went full-time as a creator, I spent a fair amount of time working in digital marketing. So here's the basics. You want your online store to have as few clicks or steps as humanly possible to get to the checkout. Don't have a big fancy homepage and then a shop page and then you click onto the product page and then you select your print and then you finally go to the checkout. Give the people the products and the ability to buy them straight away. Plus, if you're just selling 5 or 6 prints, you do not need a homepage. Send people directly to the product page. Keep the website simple, fast, and easy to navigate. Don't have buttons all over the place. Make it very obvious for the customer to take a journey from visiting the website to picking their print to checking out. The great thing about platforms like Shopify and Squarespace is that they have their own built-in checkouts that we know work great because they're tried and tested. So it's just your website's job to get the customer from visiting to checking out as fast as possible. This doesn't mean to aggressively push people into making a sale, but it just means that you should consider formatting your website in such a way where there's one very obvious decision per page that your customer needs to take. There's a lot that goes into selling stuff online, but the good news is it doesn't really cost that much to just try stuff. Experiment, see what works. Try different formats, colors, pages. Eventually you'll land on something that works. On that note, what exactly is going to get people to want to buy your prints in the first place? There are loads of people selling pretty pictures, so what will make people choose yours? That's a great question, and the answer is pain. No, okay, really, people usually buy things to solve a pain point, so what problem do your prints solve? Sure, they brighten up a room, but perhaps what they're really doing is helping the customer to showcase their personality and art taste in the decoration of their home. But more than that, I think people want to buy art prints to show their support for you specifically. They don't just want a photo on the wall. They want to contribute to you and have your photo on the wall, which is one of the reasons I lean towards local print shops, because if you're getting stuff printed locally, it means that you get to handle the prints before they go out. So you can sign them, you can write your customer a little thank you note, and you can get really creative with the packaging. I think this personal touch and that connection with the customer makes a really big difference. And if somebody cares enough about my art to spend money on it, well, I want to pay them back with as much care and attention to detail as possible. It's not just about a premium packaging feel either. Sure, most prints are gonna get shipped in cardboard, but you can also get really creative. For example, I get loads and loads of 6x4 prints every time I shoot film, which are not that great for sticking on a wall, but they're just undeniably really cool to look at and hold and feel. And because they're not that expensive, you don't have to be prissy about getting fingerprints on them. They're made to be handled. So I like to package them up in little bundles just randomly and sell them like that. It's a fun and unique way for people to support me, and it's more accessible for people that maybe don't want to plaster their walls with my prints just yet. So by this point, you have a few cool products to offer, you have a place to sell them online, but it's been 4 days and you've made no sales. And that's because you need to.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
Here's a fun question. If you aren't telling your people about your prints being available and they don't know, how can they buy them? I'm sure that you have felt that stress about posting too much on your Instagram stories about yourself. The reality is, nobody cares. Promote your print sales on Instagram or wherever your audience is all the time. Once, twice a week, every week. If someone makes a big order or you do a custom print for somebody, thank them on your stories publicly and tease the print. You have to let people know how they can support you. It's not annoying, it's not cringe, it's what it takes to be an artist. Be proud of your prints and shout about them regularly. For example, you can buy prints from me at shop.huntercreatesthings.com, shipped worldwide. And also there's like shirts and stuff, and there's more coming soon, like some stickers. See how easy that was? Don't worry, I hear you. I know what you're thinking. It's the hardest question of all. How much should you even be charging for the damn things in the first place? There are loads of different approaches to pricing. Some people do the formula thing where they figure out how much it costs them to make it, and they calculate the time, and then they add a fixed percentage of fat on top of that for them. That's one way to do things, but I think formulas are only useful right up until you run into an exception. Printing and shipping stuff is actually fairly high effort, and the bigger the print is, the bigger the impact of the print is on the person's living room. So as the prints get bigger, scale the prices up with that. Think about how much you would pay for a print from an artist that you liked. Listen to your gut and experiment. You can change your prices literally whenever you want, so take some time to play around with different offers and see what feels right. If you want some real numbers to go off, have a look at my print store. There's a link in the description, and see how I've done it. So now it's up to you with how far you want to take this. Maybe you want to print your photos on shirts. Do you guys want to buy my photos on a shirt? Or maybe you want to get into galleries and do an exhibition somewhere where you sell prints. Or maybe you want to try and get a deal with a hotel chain where you sell them your landscape pictures for their rooms. Or you could put your photos into a little zine and sell that. You can take this as far as you want, and the sky's the limit. One thing you can't forget, and one step you cannot skip. Do not give up if you make one Instagram post and don't make any sales. This takes time. It's a new skill set. You're going to be learning. If it doesn't work, experiment. Try new prints, new formats, play with your pricing, share more and more and more, and you will figure it out. And once you do, the satisfaction of seeing art that you made on somebody else's wall and enough money in your bank account to buy a new pair of socks, absolutely priceless. Most important of all, stay hydrated and create art.